when you're ready, bring people in, let people in, build your support system. Don't go through it alone. I think one thing that I made a mistake on early on, again, was trying to do everything myself, to try to take on all of this by myself, and that did not work. So I would say definitely to the family, friends, people on internet forums, whomever you feel comfortable, don't be afraid to reach out to someone. Anybody that's ever achieved anything in life worthwhile needed other people at some point. No one succeeded alone. No one handled adversity alone.
Hi, I'm Leanne Watson. I'm so happy to have you here on our podcast talk show, You, Me and Muscular Dystrophy. I'll be asking 10 questions of this week's guest, exploring the humanity and experiences of living with MD. Hello again. Welcome back, everyone. You're really going to enjoy this episode. I am really excited to actually speak with Chris Anselmo. I've found him to be a very talented, curious and unassuming man who I found a few years ago through his blog site, cleverly named Hello Adversity. Chris has since developed this into the Hello Adversity newsletter on Substack and adds public speaking to his portfolio after finding ways to overcome a huge personal and not uncommon fear of public speaking. Chris writes thoughtfully and skillfully about, among other things, the strategies he used in this situation, and shares his knowledge on myriad topics related to resilience, not just through his personal experiences, but that of others, including interviews with academics and scientists and book reviews. Welcome, Chris. Thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. What is LGMD and what does it mean for you?
So I have Limb Girdle Muscular Dystrophy. I have type 2B, which is caused by the absence of the dysferlin gene. And basically what it means is it started when I was a young adult or so, 18, 19 years of age, is when I started noticing the first symptoms. I was diagnosed at 18, but that's probably a topic for another day. But for people that have my disease, it starts usually around 18 to 21. Growing up, I had full mobility. I played sports. And then I just started noticing muscle weakness in my calves and my legs and in my arms. And over time, it got progressively worse. Over the last 14 years or so, my mouth is never my strong suit. In the last 18 or 19 years, it has completely changed my life. I use a wheelchair today. I can't walk anymore. I need a lot of assistance with daily tasks. And what it means for me is that it's, just this constant foe in my life. It's just something I have to contend with. It's taught me a lot of virtues that probably I either wouldn't have learned otherwise or probably wouldn't have stuck in the same way. It's definitely had to teach me about patience, about the importance of the people in my life, the importance of remaining optimistic. And, it also means that there's never a dull moment. There's just always something you got to deal with. There's always something you have to figure out or troubleshoot or problem solve. And it definitely makes for, let's say, an interesting life, but a unique life. It's been very hard, but also there have been some good things too.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that positive sort of little zing there, that it's never a dull moment, because that could mean two things at the one time. Like, that's very, very kind of ironic word for it. But, and it is hard going, isn't it, to change your mindset, change your perspective, keep adapting, continual change, basically. Yeah. That you didn't sort of ask for. When you were young, what did you imagine your grown-up life or future would look like? And how has this vision changed as LGMD has impacted your life?
Well, very, very early on, I wanted to be a professional baseball player. That quickly became a bit of a pipe dream once I realized I wasn't nearly athletic enough. But I did, and still do, love sports. I love basketball. I love baseball. And I always envisioned myself running a sports team. I'm a big Boston sports fan here in the US. We have a lot of great teams in the area. And I always thought that maybe I would work for them or manage them or be a coach. That's not to say that that's not still a goal of mine, although it's probably not as likely now that I don't have that experience. But I think for me, what's changed was I've kind of shifted in the last few years towards wanting to give back. And so LGMD has kind of redirected my career in probably ways that I wasn't, I didn't think of originally. And I was thinking about what I wanted to do for my life. And it's really, once I started connecting with different people that had LGMD like yourself, or other people that were in the muscular dystrophy space, or just other people that were going through tough times. You get to hear their stories, you get to learn about what they're going through. And I realized I have all this knowledge, all this wisdom accumulated, certainly through trial and error, but I realized I wanted to use that in some way that could be helpful to people in the last few years, especially through my writing and with Hello Adversity and through the book I'm writing and through public speaking. I want to be able to do more of that. I want to be able to help other people that might be struggling with whatever they're going through. So yeah, in a way, it's kind of redirected towards those pursuits. And so what I said before, like, there've been some good things. That's not to say I'm like a naturally positive or optimistic person, but it certainly has done some things for me that I was pleasantly surprised, were benefits in my life. And, that was one of them, kind of redirecting my career towards something that I realized was something that I'd wanted to do for many years, but only within the last few years that I realized just how much I enjoy doing this, how much I enjoy writing, how much I enjoy speaking.
It seems to be like you found your natural talent kind of thing. And when that aligns, when you naturally love something, it becomes easier and more joyful to do as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Regardless of the situation going on. And obviously it helps you enormously because of your situation too, with what you write about. And what I love about your writing and your articles is that and I think you specifically say this somewhere, that you didn't really want to necessarily just write, this is my experience, this has just happened to me. You wanted it to frame it in a way that that could be relatable to not even just people going through with LGMD, to other circumstances. And so you have like one of your recent posts, I think, was about your time in Boston. You thought you'd sort of live in Boston for the foreseeable future kind of thing. And, those plans went on hold and you sort of did an allegory then, I think, if that's the right word, between Boston and the stage of life, what Boston now means to you, as sort of a great memory and a start in life. But also I love how you get other people in your articles, you get other people that are very similar to you and you share their wisdom. You help us by sharing not only your wisdom, but their wisdom in your words. I really enjoy the way you do that.
Thank you.
So that's I think even if you didn't have LGMD, I would like to think you would have got to writing at some stage. So I think
Yeah, I mean, I always enjoyed doing it growing up, but I kind of got away from it for a while. And then I started using it again to write about, not even so much for other people to read, but just to write to kind of process what was happening to me. And I
yeah,
realized that I still loved it and that I was actually good at it. And I wanted to do more of it. And yeah, that's how adversity started.
your articulation of things that I've gone through, that you've gone through as well, is incredible. And to hear it from obviously every single person's unique, but my circumstance is quite different. I'm a lot older than you as well. And, it helps, it really does help me empathize more with other people, going through sort of these sort of things too.
Thank you.
But so the next one, is there anything you wish you knew when you were diagnosed?
Many things. I would
It'll
probably
all,
say,
it'll all be in your book, right?
yeah, I think I wish that I had learned the importance of just not kind of closing yourself off to other people when you're going through a challenge of some sort. For me, I was diagnosed. I mean, my parents were there too, and they obviously
Mm.
knew that I had been diagnosed. But in terms of the emotional impact, I kind of kept that part separate. I kind of closed that part off so that others couldn't see it. And I really wish now that I hadn't done that because I think that really made a lot of what I went through worse in terms of how I dealt with it, how I processed emotions, and I struggled to let people in on what was going on. So I really wish that I had known, obviously not to do that, but also known the importance of building a support system, of having people that you could turn to and rely on, and that, eventually they would find out. And
But
I
at a
mean,
time,
everybody's different in the sense that we all process things differently, especially difficult
Yeah.
news, difficult events. But I do wish that I at least understood early on that I should move towards that so that maybe if I wasn't necessarily ready to open up today, that that is still a direction I should be moving in towards eventually getting to a point where I could tell people about how I was feeling, tell them how I needed their help, that kind of thing. Instead, I kind of ran in the other direction, pretended that I could handle everything myself and became pretty clear that I couldn't.
And do you think part of that feeling is that at the time you're young, society is sort of, or you've expected to be a young, energetic, positive, fit young man
Mhm.
with his life in front of him and didn't really think that other people would understand? Uh, or, yeah, or you just said that, understand, but also obviously you would feel then that you were feeling that you were being too negative or something and people wouldn't want to be around you kind of thing if you really opened up properly, that all those sort of feelings. Is that what you
Yeah, I
mean?
mean,
And did you find the opposite once you started
yeah,
opening up?
I mean, it's before you actually do it, you always have these thoughts in your mind of how it will go. So you kind of end up with these negative connotations of like, oh, they're going to reject me or they're going to think less of me or they're going to think I'm some sort of, you know, emotional hot mess, just somebody that,
Yeah.
is always going to be needing something. So that
Yeah.
kind of was part of it too. Like I felt, I guess maybe it was a little bit of shame, a little bit of pride, a little bit of uh, fear of just how they would respond.
Mm.
But when I did, and it took, years to kind of get to this point, I'm not saying it happens quickly, but when I did let people know about it more and more, I realized that I had nothing to be ashamed of, but also that they had known all these things all along. They just were, kind of waiting for me to say something. They weren't going to,
Right.
force the issue. They wanted me to wait until I was ready, but they also knew these things anyway. So like a lot of the stuff that I thought were fears, like, oh my God, like I don't want people to know about this. I don't want people to realize that I'm struggling. They could see that I was struggling. And it became kind of clear that all of that was futile. And I had sort of just, done all that for nothing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Put yourself through all that for no reason to know that there's great people around you and noticing it all. That's really that's great to hear. I'm sure that'll help other people listening to this for sure. What has been your most pivotal moment?
I think really for me, I have a lot of negative pivotal moments, but I think the one that really kind of helped to turn my life around, if you will, was the first chance that I had to tell my patient story, which is there's a foundation called the Jane Foundation. They're trying to find a cure for 2B, which is what I have. And they invited me to the research conference in 2013 to tell my story because I was taking part in their clinical study that they were doing. And they wanted me to kind of share my experience. So I went to that. I told my story to a bunch of researchers. And, going in, I was really nervous because I hated public speaking. I had sweaty hands. My voice kept cracking, kind of like it is now. And
Mhm.
I, you know, had like pages of notes and I'm like, okay, I need all this to be able to tell my story. And then I go up on stage and I start talking and, I realized that like, wait a minute, I know my story. Like I don't need these notes. I can just tell it. And, next thing I knew, like people were coming up to me after saying like, oh, that was such a powerful story. Thank you for sharing. And it kind of planted the seed in my mind, like maybe I had more to say, whether it's through speaking, whether it's through writing. And in the months that came after, I started thinking about how I could do that. And I started blogging. And the more I did that, the more I realized how much I loved writing. And I realized that, this might be the outlet that I needed because I couldn't exercise anymore, which is an outlet for many people. But
Mm,
perhaps for me, like writing and speaking could be that outlet for me. So, um, yeah, so I embraced that. And
fantastic.
as I say, kind of the rest is history.
Yeah. So that is a great pivotal moment. And, and if you didn't have that sort of courage, really, that internal fortitude to just step outside of your comfort zone and, and get up on the front of the lectern, then, you know, I mean, that's right. It might not have happened at all. So that's
Mm.
very pivotal. Good on you. And where do you find your hope and joy?
A few places. like to say the three F's: faith, family, friends. Those have all been pivotal for me. This journey has certainly been the ultimate test of my faith in terms of just, believing that there's a reason behind this and that everything I'm doing is, that there's a purpose there, that it's not just, needless suffering. It's not just, you know, struggle that has no point to it. Family and friends, they're my support system. They're the people that I rely on. And they're certainly a source of joy for me. Sometimes a source of bickering, but also mostly
Yeah.
just a source of joy in terms of the support, the love they provide.
Yeah.
My parents, my sister, and then also my friends in terms of, you know, they kind of keep me afloat. They know how to make me laugh. They also know how to bust my chops. They know how to
Yeah. Good.
make me, put me in my place if I'm feeling too negative, but also lifting me up if I'm feeling down. And
Yeah.
um, I couldn't do any of this without them.
That's lovely. And such a really common sort of answer, really, in that, like, that's just such a basic human want or need, really, isn't it?
Hmm.
To have people, to have that sense of community and people around us. And you've probably thought about, or you've probably written about this, I don't know, but thought about it that even when we don't have quite profound degenerative conditions like ours, everybody needs help from other people. No man can be an island at all. And you become so much more aware of that, I think, in relation to not just yourself, but everyone around you when this sort of thing happens to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you agree with that? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Who couldn't you live without and why? It could be one person or it could be heaps or it could be a dog or
Um,
whatever.
I mean, everybody in my life, I again, once I realized the value of letting people in, letting people know what's going on, and being able to ask for help, I recognized just how many people are willing to come to my aid and were willing to help me in different ways. And my parents, they are getting older, but they're still, helping me, and they mean the world to me. My sister, all the support that she provides for me from afar, and then my friends, just again, they
Yeah.
certainly make my life certainly one that is a lot easier to live knowing that they're in it. Yeah, everybody I get a chance to meet, people I've known my whole life, people I've just met today, they
Yeah.
all brighten my life in some way, and that certainly makes everything I'm going through a lot more manageable to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. That's lovely. That makes sense too. So very practically now, let's move on from the philosophy for a second. What device or gadget makes your life easier?
Certainly couldn't do anything without my laptop. That's the source of all of my writing. That's the
Yeah.
source of, and I'm using AI a lot more in terms of just not necessarily not to write for me, but like just to think through ideas, think through things I want to write about, think through even how to solve certain problems in my life that either have been persistent or that crop up. I kind of use it as a co-pilot of sorts.
Oh yeah.
I'd say, from a medical device perspective, just from a very practical perspective, my Hoyer lift is, one of those eighth wonder of the world in terms of what it can do to get
Yes.
me to move from point A to point B. I couldn't do without that. I will find in the last couple of years, I've started using a bed that has an adjustable bed frame so that I can lift my head at night. Just from a LGMD perspective, that's been a game changer and just helping me to. So I used to wake up with a lot of neck pain. I wake up with like headaches,
Okay.
and especially lying down flat is not as comfortable as it used to be. And then just having
No.
something that I can lift my body up, my head up a little bit, um, has really helped with sleeping and getting into a comfortable sleeping position. Because as you know, there's just a lot of discomfort that comes from living with what we have, and anything that you
Yes.
can find that can make our lives a little bit more comfortable is certainly worth its weight in gold.
Absolutely is. Yeah, that's right. Yes, yeah, I've kind of moved on even a bit further from those, from that sort of bed situation to an airbed and,
Mhm.
undulating airbed and that sort of thing. And, back sleeping all the time now. No cuddling up on my side, which I really miss. I think I'll always miss that bit. But yeah, they're great bits of equipment and bits of advice and good advice too. To the reason I ask these questions too is that other people that are listening might not have thought about these things that, they might be in their future. And you sort of have to always be a few steps ahead with LGMD, I find. Um,
Yeah, and the little hand grabber thing when you drop something on the floor,
oh,
that thing has been
yeah,
saved me more than off. Especially one
yeah,
that has a little magnet on the side. Like I'll
yes,
drop like a pen or something and they'll be like, "Oh, I can't grab it with the grabber." And I remember that there's a magnet on it and it just,
yeah. But I was
takes it
still
right out.
doing sewing for a while before my arms and fingers kind of got affected, and that was fantastic to pick up pins and needles. And I think a lot of people get a lot of pleasure out of use out of the grabby sticks.
Yeah, that's I think one of people's favorite things.
Yeah. Um, and what resources helped you navigate your MD?
I would say, well, once I was ready to confront it fully, because there was a time where I just didn't want to read anything about it. There were the Jane Foundation had a website where I got to learn a lot about the disease and kind of what research was taking place, but also there's a lot of patient forums. Now, it's kind of a double edged sword in the sense that, people sometimes have arguments on there or they just have disagreements and whatnot, like any other forum in the world. But I did find it to be useful to meet other people that had my condition, but also, kind of like what you're doing, just like trying to find out like what are the things that people use, how do they approach different situations, if they
Mm.
have a different challenge, what are they doing to manage it.
Yeah, that might be where I first found you, maybe the one of those Facebook forum
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've
things.
met a lot of people and that's really helped me to meeting other people that had my condition.
Mm,
Again, I didn't really do it at first. I didn't really want to meet other people, but then once I started doing it, I realized how great it was to kind of have other people that understood exactly what I was going through.
and that you're not alone. Yeah,
Exactly.
very important. Well, we're coming to the end, and
Okay.
very sadly for me, but what is your advice to other people newly diagnosed?
Well, we kind of touched on it a little earlier. Definitely, when you're ready, bring people in, let people in, build your support system. Don't go through it alone. I think one
Mhm.
thing that I made a mistake on early on, again, was trying to do everything myself, to try to take on all of this by myself, and that did not work. So I would say definitely to, you know, the family, friends, people on internet forums, whomever you feel comfortable letting in and kind of leaning on for support, therapist, excuse me. Don't be afraid to reach out to someone. It's really, anybody that's ever achieved anything in life worthwhile needed other people at some point. No one succeeded alone. No one handled adversity alone. So don't feel like if you have to do that, if you need to talk to someone, if you need to reach out to someone, it's not a moral failing. It's not, doesn't mean that you're not competent enough. Really, the most competent action you can take is to reach out, is to talk to someone. So definitely do that. The other thing I would say is just, especially if you got like a medical diagnosis, grieve as long as you need to grieve. Like it's not something that you need to bounce back from tomorrow. It's not something that, has a defined path for how you're supposed to feel. And if you feel differently, it doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. So I think sometimes you fall into the trap of, you know, you'll see somebody else that had the same circumstance and they handled it one way. You think if you don't handle it that way, then there's something wrong with you or you're doing it wrong, which
Mm,
isn't true. Everybody processes these kinds of weighty things in their own way. And however way that you end up doing it or however long it takes to come to grips with what's happening, that's okay. Like it's not if you've been struggling for a while, it doesn't mean like there's anything wrong with you or that you should move on or anything like that. So don't feel like you have to conform to a specific path or a specific timeline for how you feel. That said, there is, life on the other side of whatever challenge you're going through. At some point when you're ready to move on, don't be afraid to not move on in the sense like you just put it in the past. Like it's going to be a part of your life, especially like a diagnosis. It'll be part of who you are and going forward. But if it's been going on for months or years and you're still not quite ready to kind of move past it, or you're not quite ready to kind of move forward, I'm trying to be kind of careful and how I word it because I don't want it to sound like oh just move on, like just get over it. But like there does come a point where you kind of need to start to
just sort
think
of
about what comes next
right.
and or what could you do knowing that this is a part of your life, knowing that this is your reality. Is there something that you could do to make your life better, whether it's redirecting your life towards a different pursuit, or sharing your story, or maybe going back to school, or just something where
Yeah.
you can still show yourself that you can do difficult things, that you can do really important things that can better your life. And I think sometimes there's like two extremes. There's the people that, feel like they need to bounce back immediately and then they don't really process their emotions, or the people that just kind of wallow in their emotions forever. And I know I just
Mm,
said it earlier, like, don't try to conform to a timeline, or don't try to,
yeah.
you know, let that, or don't feel like you need to, get over it by a certain
Mm,
date. But, there does come a point where you might want to reassess, kind of see how you're doing, check in with yourself, see if maybe perhaps there might be something that you can do, something positive that can make a difference. So I guess, kind of to make a long story short, because I realize that was kind of a garbled answer, but there's kind
no.
of two extremes. There's, you know, stuffing your emotions aside and just trying to like move past it. And then there's, you know, waiting way too long to figure out kind of what comes next. And I think I fell into the trap of, I wallowed in my emotions for a really long time,
Mm,
like years. And I wasn't really sure, you know, how to move forward. And then eventually, by reaching out for help, by, you know, reflecting on what I could still do, even though I was losing many abilities, there's still many things I could do. That was really helpful in helping me to eventually go to business school, to redirect my path towards writing and speaking. And I realized there was still so much that I could still do. And that's kind of where I chose to focus my efforts. So hopefully
and
that made sense.
it makes absolute
Okay.
sense. And your redirected efforts have been to the benefit of many. Well, I'm hoping thousands of us, really. You've been going for quite a while, and I know on your Hello Adversity on Substack, I think it said you've got about 4,000 followers, which is pretty incredible. Hello Adversity is well worth signing up for. In fact, your recent post with Maya Shankar, who I'd never heard of before, was fantastic, and I'm going to download her book soon. Hopefully she's on Audible. I imagine she would be.
I believe she is. Yes.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Yeah. So I thoroughly recommend anyone to jump on Substack and subscribe to your Chris Anselmo's Hello Adversity. And where else can we can see you on Instagram as well, can't we, Chris?
Yeah. I'm trying to use a little bit more,
Yeah.
but yeah, you can follow me at hello_adversity, and yeah, pretty much Substack and
And
Instagram are
Instagram.
pretty much where I hang out.
Yeah,
So
fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, you've given us some great food for thought, and I've loved our conversation. So
yeah,
thank you once again for your time, Chris.
thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
This is Leanne. Thanks for your time in listening to this podcast, You, Me and Muscular Dystrophy. To continue to help our community, it would be so great if you could like, share, subscribe and or comment on the show. Your feedback is always appreciated, and if you would like to be a guest, please contact me through Instagram, Leanne's_wheel_life, or email leanne@leanneswheellife.com. Take care until we come together on the next episode of You, Me and Muscular Dystrophy.